priesthood that didn't have any right to rule the people to begin with. Their laws aren't valid because they're not Davidic bloodline heirs.
You. By practically, you mean not really.
Really?
They're not kings. They have no right to the land. But they had now brainwashed everybody in this region to follow their laws, their way. It's our God now. You can't have him. That's what they're doing. Judah, we've also got Edom. We've got Esau. We've got all these other people. We've got moving people from all the captivities and all the reroutings. So we've got foreigners in all of these lands too. So don't be coming in here telling me that the quote unquote Jewish bloodline is pure. It ain't, okay? And some pure bullshit is what that is. Everybody's mixed, okay? And we see that when we see the progression of the term quote unquote Jew. It is not a pure bloodline to Judah tribe. That's not what it is, okay? That's not what it means. That's what you're told that it means, but that's not what it means. That term has evolved, and we'll get there in a minute.
You ready? You okay?
Nobody knows what to do. Does anybody in this room know what to do different when the heightened state of awareness goes from yellow to orange? No, you do not. Because it is useless. It means nothing. Nobody knows what to do different if it changes from one to the other. Here's the Ron White heightened state of awareness system. It's only got 2 heightened states of awareness. Go find a helmet. Put on the damn helmet.
Hi, and welcome to our Bible study channel.
Energy. Energy. You cannot fuck with this. Energy. You cannot fuck with this energy. Love the doodles in the steps. All of those who are listening. Don't miss the message, judging you. You cannot fuck with this energy. Energy.
These are videos that go pretty in depth. First thing you should probably do is pause and read our 12 rules for reading biblical text. And if you don't like the 12 rules or you don't understand the 12 rules, well, I don't have time to explain them all. Go back to the book that I wrote and uploaded on this channel, which takes you through the entire arc and how we made these quote unquote 12 rules as a framework of what we found after 7 years digging meticulously and carefully through the text. So if you're confused, go do that. If I refer back, well, that's probably because we actually post these things in order. So they're all done in series. And if you jump in at the middle of a series without any schema or background knowledge, and you get all pissed off, well, that's also not our problem. This is a group where we go line by line, scroll by scroll through the text. Warning, we are not language sensitive, so if you can't handle some cussing, it's not the place for you. We also do not endorse nor approve of pretty much any mainstream theology. So if you're looking for that, also definitely not the place for you. We do a video about the characters that we use in our Bible study series. And the reason we do this is sort of so that they can kind of get in your head. So we do have a video explaining why we chose the people we chose and how their sort of energy characteristics go along with the biblical characters to modernize it for people so they know what the heck we're reading. Clearly, the Roman Church was not doing their job and looking for the lost sheep of the reunited House of David. So that's what we're doing. Okay? We're taking that away from them because they screwed it up. The brilliant rabbis also down there in Babylon are also not looking for the lost sheep of the reunited kingdom of David. So you're not going to hear, let's follow Rome. And you're not going to hear, let's follow the rabbis on this channel. Because, sorry, not sorry, but the Bible wasn't actually written for the corrupt Levitical priesthood post-Babylon and Persia to read it through their little janky books. And it also wasn't written to be read through the eyes of pagan 4th century church fathers. So we're not doing that either. You guys can both have a seat. Oddly enough, the Bible also wasn't written to be read through the eyes of some dumbass scholars with pieces of paper that say they're smarter than everyone, but have never seen a Davidic covenant in their life. Not written for them either. You know who it's written for? It's written for the reunited house of David, who are actually in covenant and are actually the sheep. That's who it's written for. That's why nobody else can understand what the heck's going on. What you are going to hear is what you're supposed to hear, which is, let's follow the king. And let's get started.
So, we are going to war.
Hello, everybody. Let's see. Okay, we are on Luke 4a, and this is Jesus goes ham. He does. Okay, we've gotten through so much in this series. Oh my gosh, so much just throwing knowledge. So Jesus is done. He's not done. He's just starting. He's just getting warmed up. But he just came from his baptism, okay? And I want to just point out the setting of Luke 4, or this portion of Luke 4. All right, we're going to use the word village to describe the spit of a rural neighborhood that Jesus lived in. So here's an idea of what a village looks like to Western minds. So when you think of this, I want you to think of ancient Nazareth, where Jesus was raised, as like, I own 5 fucking acres of land, and the entire village of Nazareth could fit on 5 acres of land, okay, ish. So we're not talking town here. We're certainly not talking city. We're barely talking village. Think more like extended family hamlet. Okay. So you might have, a dozen and a half, 2 dozen families, being generous, depending on how many kids there were in the family, like 6, 8, 10 kids, 5 kids for each family. So we're talking about a couple hundred people, hops, from several different families that kind of clammed together in this small little podunk, couple acres of land. So that's how I want you to think of Nazareth. The other thing is, well, let's stick to the slides, Lewis. All right, our agenda for today, we're going to take a look at what this village, because this is kind of what I think in my, Western American mind of what a village would look like. But we're going to take a look at that in Mideast context and take a look at a map. We're going to take a quick little look at what the Dead Sea Scrolls does with Isaiah for a little side note. We're going to talk about where the Galilee is, where Nazareth is, how he worked with sick and demonized folks. All right, so here is what a village might look like in the Middle East, okay? So you've got your stuff. Of course, there's no car, right? We're not wearing modern clothes, but you get the idea. Now, this is more of like an out in the desert, in the sands, Saudi, Yemen, village, certain parts of Iraq and Iran, out in the sand dunes. That's not this, okay? That wasn't really Israel. it was a lot more rocky, hilly, grassy, sort of, kind of like those weird chunks of oases. It's sort of this dark brush that you can see here. Okay. And those trees in the background. But this gives you, so this isn't really, I'm not showing you climate here. I'm showing you size. Okay. So if you can imagine, this is pretty much it. This is probably even bigger than Nazareth at the time. All right. Now, taking a look over at the map, though, I want you to see Nazareth's up here in red. Okay. Can you see that map up there in red? I hope you can, because I'm kind of using two screens here, and it's not going well for me. Let's just say that. Make it a little bigger. Okay. So we've got Nazareth up here. And you can see it's sort of in this red region called the Galilee. And we've got our Sea of Galilee up here. Now, the distance from the Sea of Galilee to Nazareth is about 20 miles-ish. Okay. And then down here, you've got Samaria, which is the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel. Down here, you've got Jerusalem, which is the capital city of the southern kingdom of Judah. So we've got Israel up here, and we've got Judah down here, and they are two different kingdoms, two different areas, if you will. I wouldn't say kingdoms, but we'll say areas. All right. We're all the way up here. So around Nazareth, you got to remember, you've got, traders coming in from the Mediterranean Sea all along the coast. You've got traders coming from over here. And I don't mean trader like you're a trader to the country. I mean to do trade. You've also got folks coming back, and remember, they got hauled off into the north. So some people are, some people are coming back down and settling in the area, particularly in Samaria and around the Galilee, that are not Jewish, Babylon, that post-Babylonian Jews, okay? And not from the tribe of Judah. And those may be different things. So when you have a tiny little hamlet village like this, the mindset of the Israelites or the tribes or the Jews, however you want to describe them at this juncture, the Hebrewed over folks, but particularly if you were Jews and following the law of the Pharisees and all that kind of stuff. There was definitely a separation, okay? You were not hanging with the Gentiles on the wrong side of the tracks. And Baal and all these other gods and all this janky shit, and they're eating their fucking pork and they're running around being Gentiles. So when you had a small village like this, and we'll just say of Jews, they separated. And they dressed different, they ate different, they had different traditions. So there was a very big cultural separation between Jew and Gentile. This is why Samaria was such a nightmare, because Samaria was filled with Gentiles. They're so filled with Gentiles that they've got their whole own Messiah thing going, and we're not even going to get there. That's another rabbit hole. But just know that there was a very belief system, attitude, dress, culture, and I even want to say arrogance. There was a definite arrogance to keep that line of separation, okay, between Jew and Gentile at this time. So that's really, really important to keep that in mind. All right, we did place, we did time, Gentiles, and size. All right, let's jump into Luke 4. Let's read for you here. And Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, wait. And okay, I thought I was reading the map. I can't see. I'm sorry. That was totally my script. I thought I was seeing Greek. I'm like, what? All right. And Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan River, okay, and was led by the Spirit in the wilderness for 40 days. He was tempted by the devil. He ate nothing during those 40 days. And when they were ended, he was hungry. The devil said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become bread." And Jesus answered him, it's written, men shall not live by bread alone. The devil took him up and showed him all the kingdom of the world in a moment in time. Said to him, to you, I'll give all this authority and their glory, for it's been delivered to me, and I give it to whoever I will. If you then will worship me, it'll all be yours. And Jesus answered him, it's written, you should worship, sir, your God. All right, we talked about the little word, Kyrios. You shall worship the Kyrios, your God. Him only you shall serve. So he's talking about God the Father, of course. And he took him to Jerusalem and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, if you're the Son of God, throw yourself down from here, for it's written, he'll command his angels concerning you to guard you. And on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. And Jesus answered the devil, saying, it is said, you shall not put the Kyrios, sir, your God, to the test. Master. You shall not put God, your master, to the test. And when the devil had ended every temptation, he departed from him until an opportune time. All right, let's just take this part. What was I saying here? Stay in the call. Thank you very much. Okay, when you see in the Greek this spirit that he's being led by, the word there in the Greek is our old friend Pneuma, P-N-E-U-M-A, Pneuma. And if you've watched any of our David or our Bile or our cults or any of our videos on the occult, on Saul on trial, breathing out those threats and slaughters against the apostles, you know all about Pneuma, right? The breath. Think of the Ruach, okay? Breath and spirit are related closely. All right, just wanted to point that one out. The wilderness in this case is the desert, the wadis. Okay, we talked about wadi, that vocabulary word, a few lessons ago. And he ate nothing, he was hungry. I outlined that just because I wanted to point out, notice where the devil's tempting him, okay? He's tempting him in his flesh, in his hunger, in his desires, right? So very manly, natural thing. So he's hungry. So he's tempting him with physical needs. And I would imagine emotional needs, because when I'm hungry, I'm hangry. And so I want to point out here that every way the devil's tempting him, it's with his emotions and his thoughts. Thoughts, emotions, physicality. Okay? Feelings aren't facts, people. Feelings aren't facts. The devil uses janky thoughts and fucked up emotions to convince you of all kinds of things and reason people in and out of all kinds of things. And I think the over emotionality of humans is their number one fucking problem. And maybe that's just because I'm an asshole and, like, you know, us Gen Xers don't really have feelings. We can sort of sense them a little bit over there and wave and say hello as we're passing by, but we don't really have the luxury of wailing and whining and crying and bitching and stressing. And it's like, you know, fuck it, let it go, let that shit go. But a lot of people, especially in modern times, it's all about their feelings and how they feel. Fuck your feelings. Fuck your feelings. When have your feelings ever led you to the right place? Usually following your feelings isn't always working out very good. And by the way, same with your thoughts. Any cockamamie shit you can think up, convince yourself. Yeah. How have those plans been going? But notice that's where the devil attacks. Okay. So I just wanted to point that out. I also want to point out that the devil's quoting scripture, and Jesus is quoting scripture right back at him. So they're having a war of the words, if you will. A war of the words, a war of the mind, and a war of the heart. Okay? Everywhere. Now, in the old days, you have to understand the Torah, and one day we will break down the Torah a little more, but for right now, the first 5 books of the Bible, but just know that there is I do not believe that the first 5 books of the Bible are uncorrupted, nor do I believe that they're all written by one author named Moses, because there's 2 stories all throughout the Torah, and it's sort of these 2 groups of people having a battle. King David's got one story, and then they tell the story again in kind of a different way. So one makes him look good, one makes him look bad. Genesis has 2 creation stories. This is a battle between different factions coming together in authorship. Go back and watch this series. I think I went through this a little bit in The Key. Okay. But that being said, and that aside, just know that there's a spiritual Torah or a spiritual law of God that's not necessarily scribed, written down on tablets and books and things, okay? The kingdom is a spiritual place, and it operates on spiritual law. That's also the Torah. So the Torah, in a spiritual sense, okay, not the Bible Torah, but the spiritual Torah of God's law. And this is what Abraham followed. Abraham didn't have a Torah. This is what Melchizedek followed. They were following the spiritual Torah, not the written Torah, because the written Torah didn't exist yet. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about. Spiritual instruction from God and following God's laws. All right. So the Torah is held higher, and even the written Torah. And you have to remember, we talked about this in David's Psalms when we went over Psalm 91 and pegged David as the pseudo-exorcist, remember? Where David had that exorcism link, and that's like part of the whole thing. We did this in Psalms. Well, that's what he's quoting against Jesus. He's actually using David's Psalm, and it's the exorcism Psalm that he's quoting. So that's pretty ballsy, and we talked about that back then with David. But the Torah is more higher than David's Psalms, right? Because David's registry backed, he's covenant backed, he's got all that weight. But the Torah is even, but David's pushing it out in an instructional or emotional lens, whereas Jesus is going right to the spiritual Torah law and the precepts and concepts that are used to explain that in Deuteronomy. Does that make sense? So he's going right to a higher authority here instead of allowing Hasatan to twist the words of David. And by the way, do you ever notice that people are always twisting David? Like they always think like Paul's twisting David. That's how we caught Paul, right? Was the no one's righteous, not even one crap. That's how we caught Paul. We caught Paul because we knew David. We understood the resonance of David first. We understood the covenants of David first. So he's kind of like that anchor of covenant. And he's the one that a lot of these janky fuckers go to and misquote. So I think that's an interesting little tidbit for you. So it's not like the whole Old Testament has the same weight. Okay, just know the whole Old Testament doesn't have the same weight. You can think of this like if you put Jesus's words against Paul's words, Jesus is going to win out. If you put Jesus's words against James' words, Jesus holds more weight. Okay, same idea. But I think that's good enough for now. And notice the devil doesn't leave forever. He just leaves until he gets a better opportunity. So he's looking for his time. All right, we're going to look at some of these same verses, but we're going to see them in Greek, okay? There's where the Holy Spirit is his pneuma. We know he's coming out of the Jordan River, right? My eyes are hurting so badly. I'm having an allergy attack. I can't see anything. All right, so the Spirit is our pneuma. Let's see. Here you can see the word Son of God over here on our second one. Theos, there's that Theos word we talked about. Okay. Down here we've got the Lord, which is our Kyrios, our Sir word that we did. Notice this right here. This is your article that I told you can move. Okay. So this is why there's nothing here, because it goes over here. They don't always move those back where they belong in English, and they'll fuck up the translations this way. Okay. So this is the Lord. And this is your God. So the Sir, your God. But when they're talking about God, I would imagine they're going to use the Master translation of kurios. So if we're just going to take Lord out, this would be saying, don't put the master to the test because you obey your master, right? Master has the connotation of obedience. So it's not just a polite thing with God. It's don't put your master to the test. Okay, don't put the master God to the test. Okay. There's that curious word we talked about so many times. And he's coming back for a more favorable time. So he's not leaving forever. Okay, Jesus begins his ministry. He returned to the power of the Spirit, there's the pneuma again, to Galilee. So he's up in the region of Galilee, probably by surrounding his home, but not actually in Nazareth. So he's up by the Sea of Galilee in that big pink area that we saw back here in the map. So he comes out of the desert out here, presumably, okay, out here in the wilderness, and he comes out and he's right around here in the Galilee somewhere. So he's preaching right up in this neighborhood in the pink, and this is pretty much where he stays his entire ministry. So we're talking like, 50 fucking miles. Like Jesus didn't travel. He was like right here. That was it. That was his whole area. Okay. So he's running around the Galilee, and a report about him, that word is actually rumor, okay? Or he's becoming famous, like news is spreading quick. So there's rumors and reports about him are going all throughout the surrounding country. He taught in their synagogues. That word taught, never mind, it's the Dead Sea Scroll term. In their synagogues, being glorified by all. Glorified. I want you to think of celebrity glorified. I hate the word glorified because the Christian church has made our brains think that glorified means deified. It is not. Okay? This word means celebritized. So when Beyonce gets on stage, people are glorifying Beyonce. People are glorifying, whatever fucking actor that they love. And they're like, oh, giving praise to. Okay? It doesn't mean worship. It means praise, fame, accolades, applause. All right? So they're digging his shit. Okay. So he's doing his teaching. There's a book in the Dead Sea Scroll. It's called The Teaching. And that comes from the same word here. And he's being glorified by all. All right. So Jesus goes back to his house in Nazareth. He came to Nazareth where he had been brought up. So his hometown. And as was his custom, or as was usual, not his custom, but as was usual, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day. Now, right here, and we're not doing a big thing, it just seemed convenient to point out right now. A lot of Western minds, we go to church, okay? Western people go to church. And I remember maybe it's just my brain that does this, but sometimes when my brain does stupid shit, I just assume that other people's brains do stupid shit too. So I'm just going to throw this out there. In Western mindset, because a lot of Christians don't understand Jewishness, they sort of just merge in their head temple and synagogue. And it's like becomes all one thing. And they're not the same thing. They're really, really different. And they have really different purposes. I remember when I was a little girl, I went to school with a girl who was Jewish. And she would always say, I have to go to temple, right? So in my brain, synagogue and temple got mixed immediately out of the gate. But temple and synagogue in biblical terms are not synonyms. And he stood up to read. Now, in the old times, they would kind of have like this, just like today in church, you have like certain things that happen first, second, third, like an agenda, if you will. And one of the things was different people would take different turns reading a piece of scripture out loud. So this was Jesus's turn. And he stands up to read. And they hand him, dun, 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 the scroll of Isaiah. Now, all these different books have different weights. We just talked about that. So they were kept in different places. So the Torah was the most sacred and held in one place, and then you've got your minor prophets in another place, and then you've got all the, so they weren't like mushed together like one big book like we think of it now. Instead of thinking of the Bible as a book, I want you to think of the Bible as a library of many different books. And every denomination of the church has chosen what they want in their own personal library. But just because one denomination has these books in their library doesn't mean you can't go to another fucking library and read another book. So get away from the what books and what thing. They didn't have that back then. They were all different scrolls, and they were seen as different individual books in and of themselves. So what you have to realize is, right, like on one bookshelf, we might have scrolls that have Genesis through Deuteronomy, and these would be, you know, your foundational infrastructure. Then we've got another couple bins of, you know, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, etc. And these are different warnings and audits that you can look at, because what the prophets are doing is, you know, people today really think of prophets as like, you know, they're predicting the future. Like, you know, no. The prophets were breach auditors. I want you to think in this, you know, registry, legal, covenant terminology when you're thinking of these scrolls. So your prophets, here's every prophet ever, okay? This is what their job was. They would go to the people, or they would go to the leaders or the kings or whoever they're talking to, okay? And you've got two kingdoms, two separate groups of people. You've got southern Judah people and you've got northern Israel people, okay? And everyone in Judah isn't from the tribe of Judah. It's a name of a kingdom, not just a name of a bloodline tribe. Same in Israel. For some reason, we have this mythology today that everyone who's Judah was bloodline Judah. No, just like everyone Israel isn't bloodline Ephraim or bloodline, you know, freaking Asher or Naphtali. Like, they're different people. And you have all the mixed bloodlines going in there. So in Judah, we've also got Edom, we've got Esau, we've got all these other people. We've got moving people from all the captivities and all the reroutings. So we've got foreigners in all of these lands too. So don't be coming in here telling me that the quote unquote Jewish bloodline is pure. It ain't, okay? And some pure bullshit is what that is. Everybody's mixed, okay? And we see that when we see the progression of the term quote unquote Jew. It is not a pure bloodline to Judah tribe. That's not what it is. Okay, that's not what it means. That's what you're told that it means, but that's not what it means. That term has evolved, and we'll get there in a minute. Put a pin in that. So it was a prophet's job to go to the multiple different groups of people in the kingdom of Judah or Judea, or to the people in northern kingdom of Israel. And basically, here's what they all did. Every single one of them. Ready? You're fucked. And here's why. That was their job. They weren't, you know, YouTube psychic readers. Okay. They weren't, we're calling the psychic hotline to tell you what's happening 15 million years from now. Okay. We're not making random predictions outside of the scope of the people we're warning. That's the first thing, okay? Amos isn't running around in 700 or 9, whatever the hell BC, talking and warning people in like freaking New Jersey. That's not what Amos is doing, okay? He's warning the people he's talking to in one of the two kingdoms or both. Maybe he's warning about the priesthood. Maybe he's warning about the government. Maybe he's warning about, you guys better get your shit together, or you're going to be taken into a captivity and you're going to be put, like something's going to happen. Shit's going to explode. False gods are doing this. Why are you doing that shit with these janky gods? They're warning you, you're fucked, and here's why. Okay? That's what their job was. Now, can you take the lessons from that culturally embedded, historically embedded message from those prophets of that time and to that house? When I say that house, I mean house of Judah, south, or house of Israel, north. Can you take or both? Sometimes they spoke to both. Can you take those lessons and apply them to yourself in the world and the preachers and the government and the shit going on today? Yes, you can. Okay? But Isaiah wasn't telling you, person sitting in Oklahoma, right, in the year 2020, about a virus that's coming. Like that, we can't do that. If you want to overlay modern lessons from ancient prophets, let's do it responsibly. And the first part that they're not doing is understanding Judah and Israel are different people. And the people in Judah are not all, quote unquote, modern Jewish. It's by this time, where we are today, it's not a bloodline anymore. Okay? It's a kingdom of different groups of people. That's the first thing. So when you get to these prophetic scrolls, okay, these are registry warnings. You're breaking the contract. You're fucking it up, and here's why. That's what your prophetic scrolls are. Then you have writings, your Psalms, your Proverbs, all this stuff. It's got tone of the ancestors, and it's tactical poetry. And there's some in there that aren't written by David. Okay? Where they went back and they wrote their own ideas, and we'll see that coming up. Put a pin in that one. Oh, yeah. Because you can prove them wrong with their own words sometimes when they try to, these Babylonian priesthood come home and they try to jankify shit by throwing shit in there. And we're going to see that with Psalm 78 coming up in a while. And boy, is that one a bombshell. So put a pin in that. Okay? But these are more emotional, instructional, resonance sort of things. And many times they pull you back to that Davidic resonance, that emotional resonance. So the frequency of the covenant, if you will, to get a little woo-woo for you. Then we've got, okay, this, I want you to think of archive of all of this registry clarity versus what I call glamored edits. Okay? Somewhere, maybe at the basement of the Vatican, they've got a trail of the edits that were made. Don't tell me that your priesthood high up has no idea that Rufinus burned everything and edited it into Latin, and they don't have any copies of what was burned. They know. If they don't have the copies, they have a list of these edits. They know that Jerome went in 405 and took out this day I've begotten you. They know that edit. They know it. Okay? So somewhere there's this archive of registry clarity in what's really going on versus the official story. So when I use the word glamored, what I'm really saying is corrupted. Okay? We slapped some Christmas music on it. We threw up a tree. We tossed some tinsel on it. It made it look different, but they know where those are. Don't get it twisted. If we can find them, they know where they are. So this little group of things is like your registry clarity versus these edits. It is the forensic tightrope that you walk between scroll-backed truth, right? Truth that is backed up by those scrolls, and priesthood manipulation. And we're finding those too, okay? So Jesus wasn't just standing here quoting a sanitized chapter. He's triggering the weight and the power behind a scroll. He's triggering that resonance because the scroll has weight, and it has covenant weight, and it has registry weight. But he gets his hands on Isaiah. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, and here we go. And as I'm going back editing this, when you see these awkward cuts, it's because I'm listening back and I'm editing, because like I said, we've done these study series just in a small private group. So if I say something stupid or we throw out, whatever, it's just us, right? But when I'm putting that, we're trying to be very accurate. So every once in a while, you will hear frustration in my voice a lot, or like I'm like, I think it's funny because I get downloads pieces of information in my brain, right? And I'll learn something, or I'll something will click. And the schema in my brain goes to 57, that like the neural pathways in my brain are like lightning.
Wait, maintenance, we'll be right back. Right? Loading, please wait.
Stay right there.
All right.
I mean, seriously, how the fuck would you deal with being able to walk into someone's house and, do a session, and all of a sudden you've got freaking grade A EVP growlers like flying out, and people are throwing up on the floor and going like, oh, wow, that totally worked. Like, it's gone. Like, how do you deal with that? Not as someone who's trying to show off their ministry and like bullshit you, but like that's actually fucking happening. Like, what do you do?
Are you okay? Yeah. Were you heading for me or him? I was trying to scare him. I can't tell. Why are you on your mind? Better security. Get in the car! I was attacked! Get in the car! You're the CEO, better security budget. God, it's embarrassing. First vacation in 2 years.
And maybe that's where we understand the woo-woo piece of all of this that we've been through in our private group. And you're not going to get that unless you go to the book. But there were things that I had to do first to learn, right? With frequency things. Because it's like when you just open the Bible and you're not in covenant. And you should know by now that when I use the word covenant, I'm talking about specifically the Davidic Covenant in Jeremiah, that one. Okay, and you're operating on a very low frequency, which clearly I was my whole life. You're not going to get it because you're picking up things from a certain wavelength or grid length, if you will. And until you get into covenant and you get into that resonance, you're not going to pick up the more subtlety through the Bible. And that's actually what I think when they say things like, well, the Bible's a supernatural book. Okay, but not for you, Christians on the pulpit, because you're teaching Paul. And if you can't breach vector that issue, your resonance and frequency is nowhere near being able to understand the covenant. So there is a embedded footprint of ancestral and ancient frequency or resonance that speaks through these scrolls.
Still needs some sound.
Got it.
Right.
Hold on a minute. Wrong intro.
Working so hard like a soldier, can't afford a thing on TV. Deep in my heart I abhor ya. Can't get food for that kid. Good God, we gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Oh, we gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher.
And you have to be able to attune to that first. That's why we don't play the game of this verse, go over there, and that verse, and this verse, and that verse, and jump all over the Bible. I mean, we do that sometimes to sort of back up a premise, but that's because we're digging deep on that premise. And we won't, you'll notice if you continue watching, we don't leave it there. Like I just did a Paul's paganism video, and we put like a bunch of verses in there about like Aram, right, in the Old Testament. Well, we're going back to every single one of those stories and digging through them line by line, because you have to pick up the resonance first and recognize patterns. I can't sit here and tell you, well, in Judges verse, whatever it is, Samson did this. Like, I don't know where that verse is. I know the story of Samson. I know the resonance of Samson. And if you want to refer back, it's not to cherry pick a verse out of context. It's to find something that illustrates the point that is brought out in the resonance of that story and in that scroll. So that's why we don't do that. We might give you, something to back it up for you to go look at, but we're always circling back, guys, to do the whole context. And that takes so much time. And there's so many directions you can go that I'm constantly choosing where and when to pivot. So please excuse that and have a bit of grace when it comes to sticking with it and writing things down and having a notebook where you can put your ideas and thoughts down and come back to them later, because we spiral. I know the resonance of that scroll. I know where it's janky and where it's not janky. But this quoting verse crap is so out of sync. Christianity, Judaism, and all of these religions are not in sync with the frequency of the scrolls. So I get frustrated because I'm trying to work there, but I know that my audience spans from kindergarten all the way through. And so I'm trying to go back and fill in pieces to help you get to those 57 rabbit holes that every sentence, every word leads you to 50 other things that tie up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but we have to stop and explain this. So I'm trying to do all of those things and spiral the curriculum, if you will, so that kindergarten Christians, 5th grade Christians, 10th grade Christians, and people spinning on a wrong path can be spun back in to that torus spiral, that toroidal spiral, ether of frequency of what the scrolls are saying. And if you don't get it the first time around, maybe you'll get it the next time around. So we're constantly spiraling.
How does it go? That one. Oh yeah, yeah.
We gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Oh, we gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher.
Constantly dropping little nuggets and pieces that we're going to go back and tie up later. And so when you hear me like, oh, it's like, because there's 15 other things that I'm like kind of holding back so that I'm trying to make it make sense, right? And I'm connecting all of these dots. And I can't, that happens in 10 seconds. And I can't make all those connections for you without sitting here and going down literally endless rabbit holes that never seem to end. So it's like, oh gosh, now we got to do that. So I'm not angry at Christians. Well, sometimes I am. Sometimes I am. But I'm angry at the priests, the preachers, the priesthood that has lied and covered it up all the way back from ancient Babylon with the damn freaking Judah coming back all the way through the Rome. And it's so much. It's so much. So we're just going to keep going. We're going to keep going slowly. And just know that my exasperation isn't because I get mad at Christians. It's because I'm freaking pissed off at the entire priesthood. Like, that's what it is.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh Lord, we're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Oh, we're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher.
And there's a lot of stopping and going to fill in these spots because we're not assuming any background knowledge. Okay. So we're going to do this correctly. Ephraim. Firstborn dipshits.
Well, I never get to school, Mama, happy. Always burn a hole in my pants. I've been the lives out of me, always do a second chance. I need a love to keep me happy. I need a love to keep me happy.
But he gets his hands on Isaiah. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written. And here we go. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, and proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Whoa, boy. The Dead Sea Scrolls does a lot with this. I don't know if we're going to do that next or the next one. Maybe we'll do that next. I think, yep. Okay. Okay. We're going to go back to the Dead Sea Scrolls. You guys should all know what the Dead Sea Scrolls is by now, because we want an insight as to how poignant that Jesus is standing there in this little synagogue in his little pit-ass village, hometown of Nazareth, reading this particular verse from Isaiah. He also combined it, interestingly. He combined it with Isaiah 58. So he sort of smooshed these two together. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, Isaiah 61 is linked to prophets in the community and the expectations of end times jubilee. What is a jubilee? We're not going down the jubilee rabbit hole, but just know every 7 years and then every 50th year. It was like a forgiveness of debt. It was setting people free. If you were an indentured servant or you had to work off your debt, you were just set free. You were given back your land. Like, all this good, freeing, yummy shit happened on these cycles. And so it is an image, if you will, of the freedom through the Messiah. So the Messiah then, instead of a scheduled 7-year, 50-year jubilee, the Messiah is the forever jubilee. And that brings you to the setting the captives free verse. Okay, also on one of the scrolls, they're combined to describe the coming of the Davidic Messiah. On another one of the scrolls, they connect it to the appearance of the heavenly Redeemer named Melchizedek. We have not gone through Melchizedek, but Jesus is a priest in the order of Melchizedek, and he's really fucking important Old Testament dude. And just know he followed the spiritual Torah, and he was a spiritual priest of the spiritual Torah of the land of God, and he's very mysterious, and he's not a Levite following the janky Babylonian laws. Just know that. If you've been watching thus far, you'll get it. He actually met way back in the Old Testament when Abraham was crossing over. Remember Abraham in the very beginning's crossing over. He's Hebrewing over. He meets this guy named Melchizedek in the middle of the desert, and he actually pays homage or respect to Melchizedek. They didn't know each other, just another random dude in the desert following God. And he was a priest, and he was following God's spiritual Torah. We could do a whole separate series on Melchizedek, but we're not going there. Just know it's a spiritual figure following the original spiritual God back in the day. Okay. And the coming of whom coincided the Jubilee. All right. And even in modern days, they identify the speaker as the prophet. So there you go. So Jesus is combining these two just like they did in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is really interesting. That the Dead Sea Scrolls combined 61 and 58 from Isaiah, and that's exactly what Jesus also combined when he stood up in the synagogue. Dun, dun, dun. All right, little fun fact there. Which just relinks Jesus and James to the lunatics of the desert, right? Even more closely, historically and archaeologically. Not even a word. All right, next, he rolled up the scroll. I'm in verse 20, Luke 4. And gave it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of all the synagogue were fixed on him, and boy, did they get pissed. He began to say to them, today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing. Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing. So the prophet Isaiah saying, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He's anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor, bring liberty to those who are oppressed. Jesus is saying, I'm the guy. That prophecy from Isaiah talking about the coming Messiah, that's been fulfilled now. Knock, fucking knock. Here I am. Okay, now we're going to pause. Because when modern folks hear that, they're like, yay! Like, that's great news, right? Because we're so far removed from this setting and this audience, okay? But everyone gets really pissed off when he says that. Well, they're going to, okay? And what you have to understand is they're waiting for a Messiah, and they have been through what I want to compare to for your modern brain. These people living there have been through re-education camps, okay? Like, not literally, but like, think of a re-education, an indoctrination system so massive, all right, that they believe the corruptions of the priesthood that came back from the Babylonian Persian captivity. You got to go back to when they took all the elites and politicians away, and then Persia sent them back and said, okay, control your people, all that. So during these hundreds of years that this false priesthood is in charge, and right here we can pause and we can make a modern parallel. I want to make it clear. I'm not talking about Zionism, but you can go out into the world, especially right now, I think it's going to be ramping up. And there's a lot of people who think they're really controversial by exposing Zionism. And, you know, you can find people talking about the Darby translation and the political motives behind it and the Balfour Declaration of the Rothschilds. And you can find people talking, you can find rabbis talking about this Zionist movement creating a new identity of the Jewish people. Okay? That's not what I'm talking about. We're going all the way back because that same concept has happened before. First, on behalf of the Persians, and writing in all these laws to control the people and saying, well, Moses said so, and we've attached ourselves to David. The Levite priesthood does not have a right to rule the people. They don't have it. That's a covenant breach in itself. Okay, so when I get frustrated, with these Hebrew rootsy kind of people or whatever, and they're understanding that Rome was a breach, but then they're going back to the rabbis. Well, the rabbis are the Levite priesthood that didn't have any right to rule the people to begin with. Their laws aren't valid because they're not Davidic bloodline heirs.
You. By practically, you mean not really.
Really?
They're not kings. They have no right to the land. But they had now brainwashed everybody in this region to follow their laws, their way. It's our God now. You can't have him. That's what they're doing. That's why you hear Jesus come back to them and say, you're not the same father as my father. You guys are frauds, right? And he says, you force people to convert to your laws and your way of janky shit, and you make them twice the son of hell as you are. That's because these quote unquote Judah people came back from the kingdom of Judah. But every single person in the kingdom of Judah is not bloodline David. David's not even bloodline Judah, okay? So they're not Davidic scroll line covenant bearing people. People don't understand this. So now you've got this entire population living in the northern Galilee who have been brainwashed over centuries to follow this quote unquote religion of the priesthood. So right now, I want you to think Roman Catholic Church. There it is. And imagine Jesus stands up in a modern Roman Catholic Church after people have been indoctrinated by the priesthood for hundreds of years. And he says, this shit's over now. I'm the guy. Or David walks into the fucking church and starts to straighten some shit out. What do you think that would look like? That's the first thing.
No way. I am bending the knee to some skinny fucking bitch-ass old man who's come here out of fucking nowhere thinking he can sell us on some bullshit. Because if we're fighting, I think we know whose ass we're fucking up.
Damn right!
This is my fault. It is. I'm going to take all the blame for it, but I think we're having a little bit of a misunderstanding. I am not asking for any kumbaya. You see, I am not a preacher.
But the next thing is that as long as the Messiah doesn't come, their bloodline or family clan could still be in power and or produce the Messiah. But as soon as he comes, that's the divine monarchy. And that closes. That we're the covenant people because our bloodline matters and the Messiah's coming. And now we have this priesthood, and we told everybody that the bloodline's going to be Judah, but it's not really Judah. All that's going to collapse because the covenant is being fulfilled. So the bloodline passing down special chosen covenant, that's over now because here it is. So your bloodlines, that's it. It's not coming from your bloodline. It's here. And it's not from the bloodline that you told everybody it was in order for the janky-ass priesthood to take power. That's what's happening.
See, New Babylon, they found out about your kick-ass, badass way of life, and to them, that's a problem. For New Babylon, the solution to that problem is their laws. So, you join us. You put aside your differences, and we fight. We keep New Babylon. Ah, my Lord. Kumbaya. And you are?
Christos.
Christos. That's a very cool name. Here's the deal, Christos. I'm wondering if we could save the Q&A until, I don't know, afterwards.
If we don't want to join you.
But remember, he's saying this in his teeny tiny little spit of a village. They all spoke well of him and marveled at his gracious words that were coming from his mouth. Now, spoke well of him, that's not actually what it says in the Greek. Marveled isn't actually what it says in the Greek. The Greek can actually go either way. It's much more neutral. It's like an all bore witness and were awed at the words that were coming out of his mouth. So they could be witnessing him and being amazed in a positive light, or they could be a witness to him and being in awe, like shock and awe, like offended that these gracious words are coming from his mouth. Like, how dare you speak these gracious words about yourself, dude? And we don't know which way that goes. Generally, modern English translations do it to the positive, but I'm not that convinced. I'm not saying it is negative. It could be either. Could be either. Either way, shit's going to go south. Shit's going to go south. We've already taken on the devil. We've done some teaching, and here we are in our hometown, and we're about to get in trouble here. And they say, this is the next line as to why I don't think it's positive. Okay, it's neutral or negative, in my opinion. And they say, is not this Joseph's son? Like, who the fuck is this guy talking like he's the Messiah? What the fuck? I want you to imagine someone from your apartment complex comes in and sits down and goes, I am the Messiah. And you're like, who the fuck? Someone you grew up with. Like, in a time, I think of I grew up in a really small town in the Berkshire Mountains. It was like really small. And it wasn't even Nazareth small. Like, my high school was the size of Jesus's entire town. Okay. And I can just imagine someone sitting down and saying, yeah, I'm the guy from the Bible. And you're like, this fucking asshole. Isn't that Joseph's son? What's this crazy dude talking about? All right. So like, no. We know him. Isn't he Joseph? Notice he didn't say Mary's son. Notice he said Joseph's son. Isn't that interesting? Just throwing that in there. All right. And he said to them, doubtless, this is Jesus talking now. Doubtless you'll quote the proverb, physician, heal yourself. Because what you've heard, we heard what you did at Capernaum. Do here in your hometown as well. When he says he spoke that proverb, he's not meaning proverb from the Bible. It's just an idiom or a saying of the time, right? Physician, heal yourself. What we have heard you did at Capernaum, do here in your hometown as well. And Jesus said, truly I say to you, no prophet is acceptable in his hometown. Meaning the people that know you aren't going to fucking listen to you. But in truth, I tell you, there are many widows in the days of Israel, in the days of Elijah, in Israel, in the days of Elijah, with a J, when the heavens were shut up 3 years and 6 months, and a great famine came over the land. And Elijah was sent to none of them, but only Zarephath in the land of Sidon to a woman who was a widow. And there were many lepers in Israel in the time of the prophet Elisha, with an SH. None of them was cleansed, but only Naaman the Syrian. When they heard these things, all in the synagogue were filled with wrath. And they rose up and drove him out of the town and brought him to the brow of the cliff on which their town was built, so they could throw him off the cliff. But passing through the mist, he got away. So somehow he got away. But they were about to throw Jesus off a cliff. Now, why? Why? What did he say that was so bad? Okay. You may not put this piece together unless you're also tuning into our Paul's paganism series, because he's speaking Aramaic, right? Now, ancient Aramaic merged as a language, okay? And we'll go over that. But it's a evolved dialect of ancient Syria that Jesus speaks. Ding, ding, ding. And all the people speak. And, you know, even the priesthoods was even speaking this. Now, they weren't necessarily the religious language of the time, but it was the common language. So the infiltration from the north has come down, okay, through centuries. So we're back in that, go to Paul's paganisms, that waffle, grid, flip. Remember, we talked about Aram. We talked about Elijah. We talked about Elijah. We talked about all of this. Jesus speaking Aramaic is the language of the breached, the exiled, and the spiritually scrambled that were taken into captivity. And flipping the grid. Now, when he speaks of Israel here, he's speaking of the northern kingdom or the land, okay? He's speaking of the land that they're standing in. So he's saying there were people who were sick and needed help in the land. But Elijah and Elijah went to Aram, went to the Syrians and healed them.
Unexpected visit, huh?
They went into the waffle zone, this spiritual vortex we talk about in Paul's paganism series that keeps flipping back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Why would they go there?
Let me just take a little time here to say, we got to remember the ones that took the hit.
Why is Jesus addressing specifically the quote-unquote Syrian area or the area of Aram? Notice right in the middle of there, we've got Damascus, we've got Mount Hermon, our icky entity mountain of fame. What is he doing?
It's good to be back, It's good to be anywhere.
Well, because that's where northern kingdom Israel was taken into captivity by the Assyrian Empire. So Jesus is now fighting a two-front war. Okay? He's got the Babylonian temple system run by the Levite priesthood. The Levites do not have any covenant to land.
Dun 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 dun.
The Abrahamic covenant, we already know where that went. That went to Ephraim. Okay, and the Levites were spread amongst every place, and they didn't get their own land, so they can't rule. They're not kings. They're a priesthood that doesn't have right to rule, nor do they have land. And they're not even true Levite priesthoods because they're coming from Persia. Their bloodline has been infiltrated by Esau, Edom, Herods. There's guys. These are not pure blood Judah kings. And even if they were, Judah didn't get the right to rule.
Knock, knock.
Judah didn't get the Abrahamic covenant. Ephraim did. And you're like, but Genesis 49, the scepter shall not depart from Judah. We're going to get there. We've already gotten there, but we're going to get there much deeper. Put a pin in Genesis 49.
I said, knock, knock.
Because we're going to analyze that very deeply next. And we're going to merge it with the other favorite verse that everybody points to prove that Judah is supposedly these kings that got the right to rule, which is Revelation 5:5. We've torn that down before. Go find that. We're going to go deeper there.
There is a line. So how about you put your helmet back on, tuck all that shit back away, and stop being such a distraction to the rest of us.
And we're going to wrap it up with the bombshell psalm of Psalm 78, which blows their argument out of the water. And we're also going to look at who the heck is Caleb. So there's all of these pieces that come into play as to why I can sit here and confidently tell you Judah kings, never mind the Levite janky-ass priesthood coming in and ruling on behalf of Persia. They don't have the right to rule. They're not covenant-bearing rulers.
And where the hell was I? Oh, right. Knock, knock. Who's there? Butter. Butter who? Well, you better get out your umbrellas because it is about to goddamn rain.
Their bloodlines are janky. Okay, Jews are not bloodline pure Judah kings to begin with. They were never, and Judah was never given the kingship. And we're going to see that next. And I can say that confidently because I got more coming. All right? So you've got to understand the political and tribal dynamics going on here. Jesus just said, we're going to Israel to the lost sheep. So he's got a two-front war.
Now, I don't know if any of you have checked tonight's forecast.
He's got to go find the lost sheep that were scattered from the Assyrian, specifically northern Israel, captivity. They're all up through Damascus and everywhere else across the world. But the big place was they got taken up to Aram into Syria area. That's the first thing he's referring to. And that's our grid flip zone that we're seeing starting to emerge in the Paul paganism, which is why he's referring to Elijah and Elijah. Same grid flip here. He's also got the other Judah kingdom, southern kingdom, to battle with Babylon, who came in and took over Judah. So now we've got a Judah peasantry left behind that have been assimilated into this religion by this Babylonian, Persian, Levite priesthood, janky-ass bloodline DNA that doesn't have the right to rule to begin with.
It won't be just a rainstorm. Hell, it won't be a thunderstorm. It'll be a goddamn hurricane.
So he's got to fight the people who took off the northern kingdom and get them back. And he's also got to battle the people working with Herod in the priesthood, the Babylonian priesthood, that call themselves Jews, that claim they're from Judah, that claim kings because Judah and David and they're linking themselves, and all that mess that they've indoctrinated the people into believing. So he's got a two-front war to find the lost sheep.
Who is to blame in one country? Never can get to the one. Dealing in multiplication, and they still can't feed everyone. Oh no.
Well, first he claimed to be the prophet of Isaiah. That's the first thing. The fulfillment of the prophecy, not the prophet of Isaiah. He claimed to be the fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah. That's the first thing, which is a messianic prophecy. So he's hinting, at least insinuating, that he is the Messiah. That's the first thing. And they're flipping their shit. Going, fucking Joseph's kid? From house number 3 out of 7 in the village? Woo-woo, he's gone a little crazy. That's where they are. And then Jesus says, well, it doesn't matter because you're not going to accept me anyway. Okay? No prophet is acceptable in this hometown, which is actually an Old Testament thing. And then he tells them the story of Elijah and Elisha. Now, Elisha with SH was Elijah with a J's apprentice. So they kind of went together, okay? And this whole biblical time thing is after David. And they're running around. And Elijah was the fiery tornado guy that would call fire down from heaven and run around screaming at people to repent and stop worshiping Baal, okay? And these two are known for going to the Gentiles and not going to the Jews. So in this little town where they're keeping so separate from all the Gentiles, and Jesus is like, yeah, I'm here. Not only am I the Messiah, but I ain't the Messiah for you, because you motherfuckers aren't even going to accept me in my own town. As a matter of fact, not only am I expecting you from my own hometown to reject me, but I'm not even coming just for the Jews. There is literally nobody that's safe.
First one's free. Then what I say? I said I will shut that shit down.
I'm coming for every motherfucking buddy, just like Elijah. I'm going to the Gentiles. I'm going to the people that you think you're better than, that you have all of your divisions and cultural leave us aloneness. I'm crossing the line like Elijah and Elijah did. And they heard this and they're like, you're telling me that not only are you the Isaiah Messiah, but you're not the Messiah for us? I mean, he could be, but y'all aren't going to accept me. So not only am I the Messiah from Isaiah, but I'm going to the fucking Gentiles.
We're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Oh no, we're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Oh.
That's what he just said. Okay, now we're going to stop here. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into the term Jew. But we're going to stop with how it morphed and evolutionized into the term today. Okay? We're not going to do that. You can go look that up yourself. It's all there. Okay? But let's start with this chart. Before we get to Jew, we have to understand Gentile. Gentile are Hebrews, Abrahamic covenant Hebrews, Abraham crossing over Hebrews, family, Jacob, Israel, okay? Those are Hebrews. Jacob, Israel are Hebrews, all 12 tribes. Gentiles are any Hebrew who mixed with pagan bloodlines, okay? Rarely, Gentile means strict pagan, okay? And that's the sleight of hand trick that they're doing with language. So much of the time, and I would argue most of the time, I didn't count up the verses and compare them, but maybe we'll do that. When they're saying Gentile, they mean lost sheep of Davidic Jacob, Israel. Okay? So the first wave of Gentiles would be Assyrian captivity when they were taken off. And for hundreds of years, they mixed their bloodlines, and now they mix with the pagans. So you've got Hebrews and pagans, makes a Gentile, makes lost Israel. But don't forget, although they've tried very hard to separate themselves from the term Gentile, and that's the problem. Southern Judah was also mixed bloodlines. So technically, by their own definition, by their own modern definition, they are also Gentiles. Now the first one on this chart is very easy. We've already done this in the book, okay? Hebrews, crossing over, Abraham, that whole thing, okay? Now we get to someone of the bloodline of Judah. So that's the first thing. But that's like way back, like with like Judah, Tamar, like way back, like the patriarchs, okay? Then it becomes someone from that tribe. Then it becomes anyone from that kingdom. So very quickly in biblical text, we go from bloodline to kingdom. And we know that just with the sons of Jacob, we've got Simeons running around down there. We've got Levites plunked all over the place. We've got Judah. We've got Benjamin. We've got our little tribe of Rachel's sons in the land, the Ephrathites. Okay, so that's just sons of Jacob that could be called, quote unquote, Judah because they're in the kingdom. So it's locational. But you've also got Esau, the Edomites, the Ishmaelites. You got all kinds of, you got the Philistines, you got the Canaanites, you got all kinds of other people down there mixing bloodlines. Okay? Now, eventually, over time, post-Babylonian captivity, okay, the land is not called Judah anymore. It's called Judea, all right, post-Babylon. And because the priesthood took over, right? They came back from Persia, the priesthood takes over. It begins to morph, and it goes through an evolution. And now it's starting to have a religious connotation to mean anyone faithful to the Levitical sacrificial system and laws brought in by your Babylonian priesthood. So if you are faithful and loyal to that religion, now you're a Jew. And then finally, by the time the Romans get there, well, it's just everything. Because there were forced conversions. So it could be locational. It could be tribal. It could be kingdom. It could be living outside of the land and still being loyal and faithful to the priesthood sacrificial temple system. Okay? So it's got a very wide meaning.
Out in the street, out in the street, out in the daytime, out in the night. Oh, Electric Avenue. Oh yeah, rocking in the daytime. Electric Avenue. Rocket in the night.
By the time the Romans come in and we get to the New Testament, and this is one of Paul's favorite terms to dick around with and screw people up. Not only am I the Messiah from the prophecy of Isaiah, but I'm going to the Gentiles like Elijah because you assholes won't listen to me anyway. Now they go to throw him off a cliff. Do you see why? Do you see why? So far, Jesus had a showdown with the devil. Everybody in this entire town are trying to kill him because of what he just said, which goes right in line with John the Baptist that we saw a few episodes ago with the axe in the tree, saying, I don't give a fuck that you have a lineage, a bloodline to Abraham. Don't give a fuck. Your blood don't matter no more, motherfuckers. Mine does. Your blood to Abraham is not making you exclusive any longer. New covenant is on the way, and I'm going to the Gentiles if you won't hear me. So from the start, Jesus was battling the Jews, and people don't get that. Why would he be battling the Jews so hard? In the kingdom of Israel, guys, not in the southern Judah town. So he's doing shit the way he should, but he's Melchizedecing. He's following the spiritual Torah in overriding the Pharisee, Jewish, Babylonian, Nimrod shit with the spiritual Torah. And we're going to see that all the way through. We're going to see that bitch slap to the Pharisaical Jews all the way through. He's resetting everything and inviting the Gentiles in and establishing a spiritual Torah for everyone. That's the whole point here.